Hello guys, this is Dr. Possibility from Excel Academy. Kindly make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel and make sure that you register with Excel Academy. Please take note that Excel Academy will be giving away an iPhone 7 and other giveaways such as 500 kwacha to every student who is going to register with us. Let's quickly look at my main objective today in physiology, which is cell physiology. So we simply talked about cell physiology in the introduction, what it is and what it's all about, and what it just tries to explain. So under cell physiology, my major objective today is just to explain the fluid compartments of the body fluid compartment. So when we talk of the body fluid compartment, we're just simply trying to ask ourselves how much water is in our body. We're just trying to ask ourselves how much water is in our body, how much sodium ions are in our body, how much calcium ions are in our body, how much chloride ions are in our body, and which part of the body, which part of the cell are these things, which part of the cell are these things. So we need to know that the body fluid compartment can be divided into two groups. There are two groups in which the body fluid compartment can be divided into. So the first body fluid compartment that we can talk about is the intracellular fluid, and the second one is the extracellular fluid. So when we talk of the intracellular fluid, this intracellular fluid is not further divided, okay, and then extracellular fluid is divided into two groups. So we are saying the first one was these guys being separated into two. We have the intracellular and we have the extracellular fluid. So intracellular fluid is normally denoted by ICF and extracellular fluid is denoted by ECF. So where you see ICF in physiology, we are talking about the intracellular fluid, and where you see the ECF, we are talking about the extracellular fluid. So the intracellular fluid is further divided into two groups. We have the interstitial fluid, we have the interstitial fluid, and lastly we have the vascular fluid. So we have this one, which is the interstitial fluid, and we also have the vascular fluid. The vascular fluid can also be said to be plasma. Okay, so we have the vascular fluid, which is plasma, and we have the interstitial fluid. So let me quickly give a diagram of what I've just explained. So if you look at this point, so if you look at this is a cell, let's say this is a cell. Okay, so this cell here, it's any cell we can think of. So this part, the inside part of the cell, it forms the intracellular fluid. So from the word intra is just simply telling you inside, okay? Intra is just simply telling you inside of the cell. So when you talk of the intracellular fluid is just the liquid or the fluids that are inside the cell. We can see the nucleus here, you can see the nucleolus there, and then the inside there, which is composed of the cytosol. This is what we are calling the intracellular fluid. Intra means inside. Okay, so the other one is the extracellular fluid. So the extracellular fluid, we have the plasma here. This is the plasma. There are so many things that are found in the plasma. Okay, so we have the plasma. So the plasma, it's making up the the extracellular fluid. It's part of the extracellular fluid. So when you talk of extracellular fluid, we are talking about the outside, okay? The outside. So anything that is outside this cell, anything that is outside this cell, it's making up the extracellular fluid. And when we talk of the extracellular fluid, we are simply talking about the interstitial fluid and the vascular fluid, which is known as plasma. So plasma is known as the vascular fluid. It can also be called vascular fluid. And then we have the interstitial fluid. Now let's quickly go a bit in detail and discuss how these body fluids are divided. So like I said, body fluid is divided into two groups. We have the first one, which is the intracellular fluid. Like I said, the intracellular fluid, it is inside. That means that it is within the cell, and this we are simply talking about the cytosol, the cytoplasm. So the fluid in which all the organelles are found in the cell, it is called the cytosol. It's part of the cytoplasm. Okay, so that fluid where all the organelles are found, okay, you can talk of the mitochondria, you can talk of the ribosomes, you can talk of the Golgi bodies. All those organelles that we can talk of, they are found in this fluid called the cytosol. And this cytosol, it is making up the intracellular fluid, and this fluid is within the cell. So if this is a cell that is the nucleus, this fluid within the cell, it is what we are calling the intracellular fluid. The other one which we can talk about is the extracellular fluid. Like I said, it is found outside. Extracellular, we are talking of outside. Okay, so when we talk of outside, we are simply talking about what is outside the cell, the environment around the cell, the environment around the cell. Okay, so with that in mind, like I said, this extracellular fluid is divided into two groups. This extracellular fluid is divided into two groups. The first group is the interstitial fluid. So the interstitial fluid is the body fluid between the circulating system and the cell. Between the circulating system and the what? And the cell. So what is this circulating system? What is this circulating system? So when you talk of the circulating system, we are simply talking about the blood. Okay, we are simply talking about the blood. Okay, so the blood constitutes of the red blood cells and plasma. The red blood cells and what? And plasma. But when we get rid of the red blood cells, that's when we are having another component of extracellular fluid, which is the plasma. But in this case, when you talk of the interstitial fluid, we are simply talking about the fluid, the body fluid between the circulatory system, which is plasma, and the red blood cells and the cells. Okay, so the other part, which is blood plasma, this is the liquid portion of blood. In short, this is the liquid portion of the circulatory system. This is the liquid portion of the circulatory system. Remember, the interstitial is between, okay, the interstitial is between the circulatory system and what? Circulatory system and the cell. But when you talk of the blood plasma, we are talking about the portion of blood, the portion of the circulatory system which is having a liquid, and that liquid is simply called plasma. Okay, now Let's look at the diagram, how it can be shown. So when you look at the diagram, you find that I'm having this number 1 here, and I'm also having this number 2 here. So number 1 and number 2, they are forming the extracellular fluid. Okay, number 1 and number 2 is forming the extracellular fluid, and then number 2 is specifically called the interstitial fluid, the fluid between the circulatory system. This is the circulatory system. This is the circulatory system. It's having the red blood cells there, and it is having this fluid which is called the plasma. Okay, it's having the fluid which is called the plasma. So this fluid in between the cell and the circulatory system, it is what is known as the interstitial fluid. Okay, now any fluid in the blood, when I get that blood of yours, okay, when I get a person and I remove all his blood, any fluid remaining which is outside the cells, it is the interstitial fluid. And then that blood, when I do centrifugation, any liquid that I'm going to see, it is what is called blood plasma, when I get rid of the red blood cells. So the plasma, blood plasma, which is part of the extracellular fluid, is just something. It's just something which is a liquid in blood. Then when you talk of interstitial, it's something, any liquid outside the blood and outside the cell. Then you have number 3 there. This one is representing the intracellular fluid. Why? Because it is inside the cell, it is within the cell, and it is part of the cytosol fluid. So let's look at the distribution of fluid within the body. The distribution of fluid within the body. So fluids are not equally distributed in the body. Fluids are not equally distributed in the body. For example, when I pick water, water is not equally distributed in the body. For example, in the teeth, water makes up 8%. You get that? In the teeth, water makes up 8% of that composition. But when you go into the brain, when you check up the brain, you find that the brain is made up of 85% of water. 85% of water in the brain. That forms the highest amount of water in the body. The highest amount of water in the body is found in the brain, which is forming 85%. Okay, but when you simply talk about the teeth, the teeth is simply having 8% of it. So let's look at some facts we need to know about the distribution of fluids in the human body. Okay, so when you talk of, on average, 60%, okay, which is 42 liters of the body weight, okay, 42 liters, okay, 42 liters. You need to take note of this number. You need to take note of this figure. 42 liters of the body weight of a young adult who is 70 kg is water. So the weight of a male, remember this we have said a male adult. So there is also a distinction. There is a variety of water in male and female. There is a variety of water in male and female. There is a variety of water quantity in an infant and an adult. The baby and an elderly person, there is a big difference of water which they have in their body. So when you look at this statement, we have used a young male adult who is weighing 70 kg. So this young male adult with an average mass of 70 kg is made up of water whose quantity is 42 liters. Okay, so the other thing that we need to look at is the remaining percentage. So the remaining percentage we need to look at, 18% is proteins and related substances. So when you talk of proteins, you can talk of things like enzymes, you can talk about different substances that we can talk about which come from proteins, including hemoglobin itself. So 18% of the remaining body weight is made up of proteins, and then 17% is made up of minerals. So when we talk of minerals, we are simply talking about things like sodium, we can talk about things like calcium, we can talk about things like chlorine, we can talk about potassium, we can talk about so many minerals which are found in the human body. Then 15% is just simply fat. So when you add this value and that value and that value, they're simply giving you 40% of the body constituents of the human body. Okay, so let me quickly give a summary of what I've just simply explained. So the first thing I've said, 42 total body water, 42 liters. This is a 75 kg human being, 75 kg young male person, sorry, 70 kg. So these values are for a 70 kg young person. Okay, so the first one, we are talking about water, which is making up 42 liters and which is 60% of body weight. So remember, these values are not for decorations. These values will help you in terms of calculations. Then the other guy we can talk about is the extracellular fluid. So when you talk of the total body water, we are including both in intracellular and also in extracellular. We are considering the water in both within the cell and outside the cell. So when you get both, you find that both in intracellular and extracellular, the total amount of water in a 70 kg young person is 42 liters, which is making up 60% of body weight. Very important for multiple choice. Then the other part we need to look at the intracellular fluid. So when you talk of the intracellular fluid, you need to look at how many liters does the intracellular fluid has. So the intracellular fluid makes up of 2/3, okay? 2/3, okay? The intracellular body, okay? The intracellular fluid, it's having what we can say is having approximately 2/3 of the total body water. Remember, I said the total body water is 42 what? 42 liters. 42 liters in both intra and extra. But the question is, how much water is in the intracellular fluid? So in the intracellular fluid, we have 2/3 of water in it, which is making up 28 liters. And when you talk of the interstitial fluid, which is part of the extracellular fluid, so the extracellular fluid, it's having 1/3 of the total body water, 1/3 of the total body water, which is just simply 14 liters. So this 14 liters is divided into two, whereby the interstitial fluid is having 11 liters and then the plasma is having 3 liters. These percentages, you can calculate them. 11 of 14, which is 80%, and 3 of 14, which is simply 20%. Ladies and gentlemen, this is very important for your uh, understanding. This is really very important for your exams and other tests and quizzes. So like I said, we are just simply talking about the volume percentage in a 70 kg young male person. All right, then what are we supposed to know about this? We need to know that 5 liters, okay, we need to take note that 5 liters makes up the blood volume. Okay, normal vesicular volume has about 5 liters. Okay, so let me quickly go on to my next chapter, my next explanation. So the question is, what separates intracellular fluid and extracellular fluid? So the thing which is separating the intracellular fluid and the extracellular fluid is just the cell membrane. Okay, the cell membrane. It is what is separating the intracellular fluid and the extracellular fluid. Remember, intracellular fluid is found within the cell. Extracellular fluid is found outside the cell. So when I go back to this, you find that there is this line here. So this line here is simply explaining the cell membrane, which is separating the intracellular fluid from the extracellular fluid. So let me quickly give a good diagram on that. So my diagram here is simply explaining what makes up what separates the intracellular fluid and the extracellular fluid. So the thing which is separating them is simply the cell membrane. But we need to consider one thing. What are the properties of this cell membrane? What are the properties of this cell membrane which makes it to be able to separate these fluids? Okay, so one of the things that separates one of the properties of the cell membrane is what it is freely permeable to water. Okay, it is freely permeable to water. Okay, so this means that in a steady state, intracellular and extracellular osmolarity will be the same. So there is the same way or the same or the steady mode of allowing water through it. So the water which is going this side is constantly at the same rate. Same applies with the water which is leaving the cell. The water which is entering the cell is the same as the water which is leaving the cell, and that is normally 295 moles per liter. So that's the value which passes through the intracellular. Then what other thing are we supposed to consider? So remember, I said the body fluid, it has some minerals such as sodium, chloride, and also other stuff. So one important thing is that this guy is impermeable. Okay, this guy is impermeable to sodium chloride. So sodium chloride is just made up of sodium ion and also chloride ion, which are ionically combined together. So this guy, it's make sure that it is impermeable to what? To sodium chloride. Take note of that. Take note of that. It is very important for your exams. So the difference in the concentration of impermeable particle determine the osmotic movement of water across the membrane. So when you talk of these ions, they these ions, these particles such as sodium chloride, because they are impermeable, they can't pass through the cell membrane. Because they can't pass through the cell membrane, this helps us to determine the osmotic movement of water across the cell membrane. For example, when you talk of my diagram here, because of, let's say I make this guy to be more concentrated and this one to be less concentrated, so you find that there will be movement of water from this region to that region. So because of the differences in these impermeable substances, this helps us to determine how water will move. This can be easily explained when we talk of the hypertonic, when we talk of hypotonic solution, and isotonic solution. All those things can be explained because of these substances which cannot pass through the what? The cell membrane. So this is the cell membrane here. So this cell membrane is simply determining in what way will water move. So the water will move either into the cell or outside the cell. So when the cell is diluted, when the cell is less concentrated, automatically the water will move out of the cell. And then when the cell is highly concentrated, automatically water will move into the cell. For example, when someone is thirsty, it means that the cells are lacking water, and as a result, you are going to be taught by your body, by the brain, which is going to tell you to take some water. Why? Because now the water in the cells are less. Okay, there is a difference in the water. So when you have a lot of water in the body, you discover that the cells will be releasing out the water from them, and automatically that's why you are going to visit the toilet and other stuffs. Okay, so when we talk of the concentration, what do we call the concentration of these substances? These substances or these particles such as sodium chloride, which are impermeable to water, what do we call this? So the concentration of these particles is often referred to as the effective osmolarity. Okay, effective osmolarity. So that's the term which we can talk about when we talk of the concentration of these particles. Okay, so with that being said, without being mentioned, let's look at the constituents, okay, of extracellular and intracellular fluid. Let's talk about what does the extracellular fluid made up of and what does the intracellular fluid made up of. Of course, we have said sodium chloride is impermeable. It doesn't pass through the cell membrane, and this determines the osmotic movement of water, and the concentration of such substances is normally known as the effective osmolarity. All right, so let's quickly look at the constituents, or what makes up the intracellular and what makes up the extracellular fluid of the cell. So let's quickly go to our next slide. So this is very important, ladies and gentlemen. This is normally there when it comes to the multiple choice. So you need to know that this region from here, okay, from here, this line here, this line there, it is just separating the intracellular and the extracellular fluid. Bear with me, I'm not good at at. So this line here is separating the extracellular fluid and the intracellular fluid. So the extracellular, we are talking about plasma, we are talking about the interstitial fluid. When we talk of the intracellular, we are talking about what is inside. So this diagram is very important. As a student, you need to know in what amount, or not in what amount, I can say which part of the cell has a lot of calcium and which part of the cell has a lot of um, sodium, which part of the cell has a lot of potassium. Okay, so the first thing we can look at are sodium ions. So if you look at this diagram, please make sure that you pause the video and make sure that you check up this chart after the class. So the extracellular part has more sodium than the intracellular part. This means that there is more of sodium outside and less of sodium inside. Okay, so the cell has a lot of sodium outside and few sodium inside the cell. Take that note. So the opposite of sodium, it is potassium. So the cell has a lot of potassium. Okay, a lot of potassium, a lot of potassium inside, and what? Less of potassium outside. So to summarize this, what I can say is that the extracellular fluid has sodium, calcium, chlorine, chloride, and HCO. Okay, so hydrocarbonate, yeah, so it has a lot of sodium, calcium, chlorine, chloride, hydrocarbonate. These four, okay, these four, NCCH, okay, NCCH, NCCH, that's the abbreviation which I normally use. So NCCH is found in the extracellular part. So personally, what I do is when I know the extracellular side of the cell, I a little bit forget about the intracellular, because I know that when I know that sodium, calcium, chloride, and the hydrocarbonate, they are outside. Okay, they make majority of the outside, meaning whatever remains is forming the other side of the cell, which is the intracellular part. Okay, so ppkm, ppkm, they are the ones which are now forming the intracellular part, ppkm. So when I talk of P, I'm talking about proteins. I can talk about phosphorites, and is it phosphate and other organic anions. So all these other organic anions, they are just part of the intracellular. And then when you talk of magnesium ions and potassium ions, they are forming the intracellular part of the cell. So please make sure that you check up this and make sure that you know that the outside has a lot of sodium, the outside has a lot of calcium, the outside has a lot of chlorine, and the outside has a lot of hydrocarbon. So when you make your research, there are more values, there are more tables like these tables. So make sure that you go through these tables and try to check up the values. But normally it's not really important to know the values, but one of the things that is very important to take note of is urea. Okay, so the urea, when you talk of the urea is normally maintained. Urea is normally maintained. The amount of urea in the body is the same. The amount of urea in the intracellular and in the extracellular is just the same. There is no variety of these guys. Okay, so let me quickly go and give you another table. We can have that other table there. So these are just part of the tables that you can check out, and make sure that you know the figures, but you don't really need to know the figures. What you need to know is what is more on the extracellular. For example, you can talk of sodium, you can talk of chloride, you can talk of calcium, you can talk of HCl, CO3. Those are things that you need to consider. So with that being said, we can talk of total blood volume. Total blood volume. So let's quickly discuss what total blood volume is all about. I'm pretty sure we are all aware of blood. We all know what blood is all about. Blood is made up of the red blood cells and also the plasma. So the question that we can try to answer is, what is total blood volume? What is total blood volume? By the way, before I finish up this, please make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel and make sure that you register with Excel Academy. Remember, Excel Academy is offering physical and online classes, so make sure that you register with this. So when you talk of total blood volume, when you talk of total blood volume, we are simply talking about the plasma and the cellular element, which is mostly the red blood cells. Okay, the red blood cells. So when you talk of the total blood volume, it is the addition of plasma and the cellular element of blood. So we have the plasma, which is forming the extracellular fluid, and also we have the cellular element of blood. So when you talk of the cellular element of blood, our major focus most of the time, it is the red blood cells, but blood has other cells such as the white blood cells and other cells. Okay, sorry guys, I was communicating with my colleagues concerning some classes. Please forgive me for that, and yeah, let's just continue where we ended. Okay, so when we talk of what total blood volume is, we are simply talking about the plasma, and we are also talking about the cellular element of blood, and mostly we focus on the red blood cell. So what is blood in short? So when we talk of what blood is, we simply need to look at what it is made of. So due to the disturbance, I'm going to make part 2 of this class, which I'm going to share with you. So please make sure that you register with Excel Academy and make sure that you study hard. All the best and have a blessed day.